What we're here to talk about today is the fact that the brain is and will be the 21st century battlescape in many ways. End of story.
There's this enormous mystery waiting to be unlocked. And the BRAIN Initiative will change that by giving scientists the tools they need to get a dynamic picture of the brain in action and better understand how we think and how we learn and how we remember.
The BRAIN Initiative is a $6 billion fund to find new ways to map the activity of an entire brain. Leading neuroscientist Professor Raphael Just was at the front of the queue for funding.
The goal of the BRAIN Initiative is precisely to build methods to read and manipulate the activity of neural circuits.
But some people fear that electrical stimulation could be used to manipulate people rather than to treat mental illness.
Recently released CIA documents refer to the feasibility of remote control of animals, and that special investigations will be conducted toward the application of selected elements of these techniques to man.
There's no way that I can see that it could be abused or misused.
A group of scientists say we are closer than ever to creating technology which can emerge with human biology in order to access the cloud in real time. Confused? Well, RT's Virgil Blevins is here and has all the details.
Can you imagine technology that is so advanced it could provide you with instant access to the world's knowledge and artificial intelligence as soon as you think of a specific topic? According to a group of scientists from around the world, neural nanorobotics may be developed to enable a safe, secure, instantaneous, real-time interface between the human brain and both biological and non-biological computing systems. This level of technology could include brain-to-brain interfaces, brain-to-computer interfaces, and specifically brain-to-cloud interfaces. Technology linking the brain to the cloud could drastically alter the state of communications between humans and machines. So in order for this to become possible, the study noted that data transfer between living human brains and the cloud would likely require the use of supercomputers with artificial intelligence algorithms.
The Human Brain Project's high-performance computing platform will offer simulation scientists unprecedented exascale computing capabilities. New techniques of interactive supercomputing will give scientists the tools to visualize and work with simulations as they run, the same way they would use an instrument in the lab. New high-performance computing technologies from the Human Brain Project will have an impact that goes far beyond brain research.
But some people fear that electrical stimulation could be used to manipulate people rather than to treat mental illness. There's no way that I can see that it could be abused or misused.
Do you know why they've got my team decoding the entirety of human thought?
Yeah, so I can tweet without a keyboard.
Implanting. That's the end game. The power to implant thoughts into a person, a group, an entire population.
By placing electrodes deep within the brain, investigators, including Dr. Jose Delgado of Yale University, have located precise regions that activate emotions such as fear and rage, and basic drives such as hunger and sex. Electrodes can carry currents into the brain and allow the scientists to control behavior.
There's no way that I can see that it could be abused or misused.
Hi everyone, this is President Barack Obama. The US and Australia are funding research into a device that could someday allow people to control their minds, and without invasive brain surgery. When implanted into a blood vessel, this network of tiny electrodes can record your brain signals. It sounds like something from the future, but it's just another example of how investing in research can move us all forward.
But some people fear that electrical stimulation could be used to manipulate people rather than to treat mental illness.
The University of Oxford Functional Neurosurgery Group released a new report claiming that brain implants could be used to steal, spy on, alter, or control human memories.
They'll sell it to the world as the power to communicate, and then they'll have complete power to control. The CIA won't need to stage a coup to rig an election across the planet. Hell, they could turn any one of us into an undercover assassin whenever they wanted, and they would do it all from a computer in a lab right here.
It's here, not so long ago on a tragic night that has many wondering what could make a man snap and lose control.
See, I am a victim of electronic harassment. and gang stalking.
On November 20th, 2014, 31-year-old Myron May walks into Strozier Library on the campus of Florida State University and opens fire.
I'm what's called a targeted individual.
There's no way that I can see that it could be abused or misused.
Thousands of government-sponsored experiments did take place. In too many cases, informed consent was withheld. Americans were kept in the dark about the effects of what was being done to them. The deception extended beyond the test subjects themselves to encompass their families and the American people as a whole. For these experiments were kept secret.
They've been testing on humans for months. They were stuck and we just unlocked it all for them. It's too much power. Will this work? Everything that we're doing, this is the end of freedom.
The movie The Matrix was just a tale of science fiction, yes, but it is beginning to look more like a documentary every day. Now, some may scoff at this idea and say, "You're just fear-mongering. That's not going to happen, you conspiracy theory nut." Well, I may be a nut, but there is no conspiracy when the information is made public to you. That's just you not being aware of it. So we are going to take a closer look at this, because right now, something is happening that you may not be aware of. A sentient simulation of our world in real time. No, this is not a video game, folks. But for those who think it is, I have a question. Are you ready, player one?
The true control grid is this technology, voice-to-skull, hive mind, behavior manipulation technology, and it can all be done remotely.
That they have a division focused solely on developing the technology for use by the military, government agencies, law enforcement agencies, and foreign governments.
And this technology at that point, when it is nationwide, will be used by automated computers, supercomputer software programming that will manipulate the emotions and the behavior and the thoughts of everybody in the United States of America. And it can all be done remotely.
It sounds so futuristic. It sounds crazy. Like video phone calls, or pocket-sized computers, or the government watching all of us all the time. Guess what, people? The future is here.
There is a very real risk that you are going to become a full-blown, 24/7 targeted individual.
You might want to start watching what you think.
The first generation of technological society, we have been acted upon by forces of such power that few, if any, of us can understand. Extensive information gathering on every American, human experiments with drugs and psychosurgery, electronic surveillance, the era of the computer, invasion of privacy, growing government and corporate power over our lives, a people plagued by dehumanization, loneliness, and violence. Dramatic? Perhaps. But we are losing control of our technology and our lives.
You asked why I picked you. I didn't. You did. The surveillance you've experienced means you've been selected. A term which will mean more to you as you learn about how the modern SIGINT system works. For now, know that every border you cross, every purchase you make, every call you dial, every cell phone tower you pass, friend you keep, article you write, site you visit, subject line you type, and packet you route is in the hands of a system whose reach is unlimited, but whose safeguards are not. Your victimization by the NSA system means that you are well aware of the threat that unrestricted, secret police pose for democracies. This is a story few but you can tell.
Inherently and historically opposed to secret societies, to secret oaths, and to secret proceedings.
This is the story of the search for mind control. ABC News Close-Up. Mission Mind Control.
The reason I keep coming back to MK Ultra and its surrounding programs is because the more I research, the more I realize that we are living in the very product of that program today. The harder you look around, the more obvious it will become that the public wasn't told anything about the real aims and objectives of the CIA's, really they call it a mind control research program, but it was really just a control research program. Mind, behavior, individual, society, global. And when the revelations came out in the 70s, they dazzled the public with tales of Manchurian candidates and spy versus spy and Korean brainwashing techniques, and they purposefully flung all their dirty laundry around, salacious tales of prostitute halfway houses and LSD being administered to unwitting people just to see what would happen. But the whole revelation of the MK Ultra program is pretty much a joke. It would take over 100 books and dozens upon dozens of documents to spell it all out for you in minute detail, but the technocratic, cybernetic New World Order that's unfolding all around us right now has always been about total world domination. And it connects to every other conspiracy you can possibly think of. And when you really start to research just what's been declassified, just the information that's out there, when you read the documents yourselves and you start really looking through the books and the writings of some of these people, and you realize all of this, it's pretty clear that this is one of the biggest threats that we actually face today. Behind all the stuff they tell you in the media, behind all the other stuff that's going on that they flash in front of your face to distract you, this is a serious situation.
2013 to 2014. New centers working on cybernetic technologies for the development of radical life extension rise. The race for immortality starts. 2015 to 2020. The Avatar is created. A robotic human copy controlled by thought via brain-computer interface. It becomes as popular as a car. In Russia and in the world appear, in testing mode, several breakthrough projects. Android robots to replace people in manufacturing tasks. Android robot servants for every home. Thought-controlled avatars to provide telepresence in any place of the world and abolish the need for business trips. Flying cars. Thought-driven mobile communications built into the body or sprayed onto the skin. 2020 to 2025. An autonomous system providing life support for the brain and allowing it interaction with the environment is created. The brain is transplanted into an Avatar B. With Avatar B, man receives new, expanded life. 2025. The new generation of avatars provides complete transmission of sensations from all 5 sensory robot organs to the operator. 2030 to 2035. Rebrain. The colossal project of brain reverse engineering is implemented. World science comes very close to understanding the principles of consciousness. 2035. The first successful attempt to transfer one's personality to an alternative carrier. The epoch of cybernetic immortality begins. 2040 to 2050. Bodies made of nanorobots that can take any shape arise alongside hologram bodies. 2045 to 2050. Drastic changes in social structure and in scientific and technological development. All the prerequisites for space expansion are established. For the man of the future, war and violence are unacceptable. The main priority of his development is spiritual self-improvement. A new era dawns. The era of neo-humanity.
The connections will start to be made between artificial intelligence and the human brain. And the human brain will be connected to what he calls the cloud. Another name for this is the smart grid, basically to artificial intelligence. As time passes, artificial intelligence will be more and more of human thinking and human perception until basically it's the totality of human thinking and human perception, at which point we won't be human anymore in terms of the consciousness processes we are using today. We will be artificial intelligence. And this is the assimilation I'm talking about. If you are connecting the human mind to a grid, a global technological grid, that grid can be centrally controlled. It will take at the center point very, very few people to run it, and even fewer to decide how it's run.
Based on the highly sanitized technical papers that are in the public domain, the Jade 2 system is able to register emotion and calculate intent based on our direct and passive interactions with technological devices, and it's capable of rewriting its very own programming to adapt to human activity. That means it can learn, and that its intelligence isn't artificial. It's self-sufficient and self-aware. It boggles the mind, and it's everything we'd expect a Skynet to be. Everything you can think of as being no big deal is being used to build a profile of who you are, where you go, and what you do, so that if need be, it can predict your future behavior, so that it can predict what you are going to do and where you are going to be. Of course, this program is in its infancy stage compared to what it is going to become. That is why I say to you, if you can escape, now's the time to do it, because once this system has evolved and has become fully automated and fully functional, there will be no escaping the new reality.
It's the stuff of a Hollywood movie, but a group of veterans has filed a lawsuit against the CIA and U.S. Army claiming that the government planted remote-controlled devices in their brains. The claims relate to a government program at the U.S. Army's Edgewood Arsenal in Maryland, where scientists tested hundreds of chemical and biological substances on at least 7,800 servicemen. So could this really be happening? Well, joining me to help discuss this is Dr. Colin Ross, president of the Colin A. Ross Institute for Psychological Trauma. Dr. Ross, tell me, is this really happening? Did the government really take part in mind control experiments on soldiers? What kind of stories have you heard from the survivors of these experiments? I know you've had access to thousands of documents from the CIA.
Well, it's just like you just said, there's two kind of streams of information. There's stories from survivors, and then there's the documents. So if I go to the documents first, they're very, very detailed, 15,000 pages plus. And we're starting back in 1950 with projects called Artichoke and Bluebird, which were then rolled over into MK Ultra, which in turn was rolled over to MK Search, and then all the documents stop in 1973. So in that era, 50 to 73, there's a whole host of different types of mind control experiments: hypnosis, LSD, special interrogation chambers, and brain electrode implants. And so there's projects in the CIA documents and in Army records where electrodes are put into dolphins, and the dolphins are directed by remote transmitter to deliver a bomb to a target. And there's a discussion of similar technology in cats and other animals. There's research funded by the Office of Naval Research published in mainstream journals where electrodes are put in the brains of cats, dogs, and their behaviors controlled, and even human beings at Harvard and Yale. So this is absolutely documented fact.
So tell me how commonplace this was. Are we talking about one program that took place decades ago, or do you think it's happening more often than that? And if so, how could it be so secretive? I mean, most people would think this can't be true. This is stuff out of a movie.
Right. It was not just one program back in the 50s, 60s, 70s. It was Harvard, Yale, Tulane, UCLA. So we know there was more than one university involved, more than one branch of the military, more than one program for a fact. What's going on currently, of course, is all classified. People tell you stories about it, but I can't actually prove that it's happening today. I'm certain that it is, but I can't prove it.
I've worked on projects for the CIA, Justice Department, and Department of Defense.
Is this the stuff, voices in the head and things like that?
Yes.
Are these people crazy, or is the government doing this to them?
The government's doing this to them.
He's not even bothering to hide it. So you know for a fact that these weapons that you worked on, they're being used domestically today?
Absolutely.
You will encounter some form of neurocognitive science that has been weaponized not only in your military career, but in your personal and professional lives. It is valid, valuable, and already in operational play. The brain is the current and future battle space. What's new about this is the in-close nature of this. Increasingly, we're not seeing these things as weapons of mass destruction against gross aspects of the population. More specifically, perhaps, might be targeting individuals on a level that allows either direct attribution or covert engagement with non-attribution. If we talk about what brain science is, let me just give you a little bit of brief background on this field that is now called neuroscience. As a titular field, as a named field, neuroscience has only been in existence for 40 years. I know that because I've been a neuroscientist for about 38 of those 40 years. Increasingly, it is becoming an international, multinational, global, and independently exercised event and endeavor, which increases the capability of the brain sciences to develop not only new theories, but ever more sophisticated tools. So, how then can we use these elements as weapons, means of contending against others? Formal definition of a weapon, probably the one that you've heard about most recently, most contemporaneously in the literature, is the possibility to use some form of directed energy to affect physiology peripherally and also to affect the physiology and health of the brain. Case in point here, U.S. Embassy personnel in Havana and possibly in China. And then, of course, you also have the things that are a little bit more traditional. If we talk about things that can be operable in the biochemical space, we ordinarily talk about drugs, bugs, toxins, and ever more, we're considering devices. I can disrupt an individual from the level of their cell to their system, and disrupt individuals on a variety of levels, from individuals all the way up to the social fabric. Target a specific individual, change or eliminate that individual with very little attribution and trace, and be able to leave prior to any attribution. Drugs can be exceedingly specific, and as I'll show you in a moment, can be very, very much used to individualize weaponology in terms of what we call precision pathology or precision effect. And by affecting the way that brain is built and the way it functions, influence in ways that are kinetic and non-kinetic the attitudes, beliefs, thoughts, emotions, activities. Look at the power that understanding tools, techniques the brain sciences afford. The brain is the current and future battle space.
There is a very real risk that you are going to become a full-blown 24/7 targeted individual. And this technology at that point, when it is nationwide, will be used by automated computer, supercomputer software programming that will manipulate the emotions and the behavior and the thoughts of everybody in the United States of America. And it can all be done remotely. It's very much like the microchip kind of tracking the New World Order, this entire, control grid that's supposed to be rolled out against the American people someday. And I'm here to tell you that it's already here. There isn't going to come a day where there's troops in the streets and tanks rolling down your neighborhood and riot gear and all this stuff. We might have isolated incidents like that. It might get like that every once in a while, but the true control grid is this technology, voice-to-skull, hive mind, behavior manipulation technology. And it can all be done remotely. It can be done simply by targeting you with the frequency, locking into the resonant frequency of your DNA and your mind, and in that manner completely track and trace and control you 24 hours a day.
Clearly, one of the things we can also do is transcranial neuromodulation, the idea of going through the skull to modulate the node network activity of the brain, to implant certain brain-machine interfaces. These are many of the DARPA programs that you may hear of now. Probably the one that is the most notorious is something called the N3 program, which is the non-invasive neurosurgical neuromodulation program being run by their program manager, Dr. Al Mundy. The idea here is to put minimal-sized electrodes in a network within a brain through only minimal intervention to be able to read and write into the brain function in real time, remotely. The brain is the current and future battle space.
So what we're talking about here is total technological control in a way that I don't think the average person can even fully grasp the level of. The five-sense reality can be manipulated, just straight up. And so we're going to live in a world where seeing is not believing. You're going to be trapped in this matrix that they've been building for decades. They've built this whole structure that they've placed over the natural world, and they can bypass your senses with it. Literally. That's what it means to say a world where you can't tell the difference anymore between reality and what that is and this matrix.
It's so realistic, you will not be able to tell the difference between that game and the reality as we know it.
And it's not a coincidence at all that all the movies and TV shows that you're seeing come out right now are just right there to reinforce this idea to you that reality is not what you think it is. You aren't who you think you are. There's a hidden secret you haven't been told about everything. It's all coming together. There's a reason people refer to this as spiritual warfare. Take all this together out to its logical conclusion, and it's like every episode of The Twilight Zone has now been mixed together in a blender and unleashed onto society. It's beyond the Matrix.
The research is conducted by the U.S. military's Defense Advanced Research Projects Agency, or DARPA, which we know too well by these robot videos. The new program is called Neural Engineering System Design, or NESD, which aims to develop an implantable neural interface connecting humans directly to computers. Philip Elvelda, NESD manager for DARPA, said its goal was to upgrade the tools that we have to really open the channel between the human brain and modern electronics. At the moment, human-computer interfaces are able to connect between 100 and 1,000 brain neurons to a machine at a time. DARPA aims to refine this technology to connect individual neurons. This would give much finer control, reduce noise, and speed up communications between a human and a computer. DARPA's website confirms the news, also citing that among the program's potential applications are devices that could compensate for deficits in sight or hearing by feeding digital, auditory, or visual information into the brain at a resolution and experiential quality far higher than possible with current technology. Considering that DARPA's research has an end goal of military application, it's not hard to imagine where that could be used.
So what exactly would the government do when they would control someone's mind? What could they make someone do when they manipulated their brains?
Well, what it describes in the documents and in the published papers is there's actually photographs of a 16-year-old girl. She's got a series of electrodes in her brain. Depending on which button's being pushed on the transmitter, she's either strumming her guitar, pounding furiously on the wall, or staring off into space. With the animals, they're actually directed to walk or swim to a target. So you can control the actual physical motion and the mental state. How detailed and how fine-tuned that's gotten since 1970, again, I don't know because it's all classified. But it must have gotten a lot more developed.
One of the newest developments is that nanoparticulate matter can be stabilized for distribution. If you're not aware of what nanoparticulate matter is, it's that matter which exists on a scale of 1 × 10⁻⁹. Very, very small. Smaller than a cell. And we can manufacture materials that have discrete properties that can be controlled by virtue of bioengineering and their physical chemistry. I can create small robotic units, controllable robotic units at the nanoscale, and that these too can be aerosolized to create a nanoswarm of biopenetrable materials that you cannot see, that can penetrate all but the most robust biochemical filters, that are able to integrate themselves through a variety of membranes, mucous membranes, and wherever, mouth, nose, ears, eyes, can be then uptaken into the vascular system to create clumping, can affect the vascular system of the brain, or can directly diffuse into the brain space, and these can be weaponized. And they can be done in such a level that their presence is almost impossible to detect, and as such, the attribution becomes exceedingly difficult to demonstrate. We've come to the precarious position of opening the proverbial can of worms of if, how, in what ways, to what extent, and when these techniques and technologies will be used in weaponized intelligence and national security agenda. Are civilian ethics even viable any longer? And if we engage military ethics, what military ethical principles will we engage? The brain is the current and future battle space.
This technology can also be used to manipulate the emotions of the target. It can induce fear, love, hate. It can cause you to be nervous. It can cause you to be confident. It can cause you to be depressed. It can cause you to be happy. It can cause you to feel any fucking emotion at any time by artificially inducing them. This technology can be used to beam images and even motion pictures into one's brain. Images and motion pictures that are so realistic that you think you're actually watching a movie or seeing something in reality. It's like a virtual reality 3D rendering that takes place within the target's mind.
Let's imagine that we could take our brain out of our body and keep it alive in a glass box. Then let's get a computer filled with information related to a particular setting, such as image, sound, and smell. We'll connect this computer to the brain with electrodes and send the pre-recorded data to the brain. As our brain receives these signals, it will see and live the setting that the computer is transmitting. We could also send signals to the brain from this computer about our own image. For example, we could send the electrical information, such as the sight, hearing, and touch, that we would experience while sitting at a desk. Our brain would perceive that we were a businessman sitting in his office. This imaginary world would continue as long as the information kept coming from the computer, and we would never realize that we were actually a brain sitting in a glass box.
Our reality is increasingly being manipulated and mediated by technology to a point that it's merging, it's blending. And I think people are starting to feel it.
Possible that a simulation is one day going to be inevitable, that we're going to have something that's indistinguishable from regular reality. It seems like people are like longing towards some weird log cabin type nostalgia.
Sure, reality.
Yeah, like holding on, like clinging, just dragging their nails through the mud, like don't take me yet.
And the World Wide Web only gives us the illusion of being present. But the reality is we're only in our homes connecting to a digital space. So that presence is an illusion. And once we get to a point of augmented and virtual reality, well, that just takes the phrase spirit of slumber to a whole new, unprecedented level.
And so once you have connected the targeted individual with the frequency, and they resonate together, then you'll have a perfect avenue upon which to send and receive information back and forth. And that's exactly how they manipulate someone's thoughts. They send voices into someone's head. They manipulate their emotions. They manipulate their behavior. And then that's also how they receive back from the individual in real time the vital signs, the emotions, the thoughts, what the person's seeing, what the person's hearing. And then all that information, of course, is rendered on a computer elsewhere via software, and it can be monitored and tracked in real time. It can literally stop your own thoughts from happening and replace them with other thoughts by sending thoughts to your head. And it's so sophisticated that you cannot tell where these thoughts are coming from. There's no way to discern that they're coming from somewhere other than your own mind. So you can imagine how bad this would be for people that don't even realize this technology exists. And they're having these thoughts, which they think are spontaneous, because being under the influence of this technology now, kind of having been on both sides of it, I am just amazed at the way it works. And I know that the thoughts that they beam into your head originate from the exact same place in your mind that your own natural thoughts originate from. So if I didn't know I was under the influence of this technology, then I would have no idea that anyone was influencing my thoughts at all. And that's exactly what it can be used for. It can be used to sway people in terms of their opinion, to make them go along with a certain agenda. It can be used to turn groups of people or individuals against each other for whatever purpose.
I'm a former naval officer. I'm a graduate of the United States Naval Academy. I have a degree in control systems engineering. I worked as a surface warfare officer in electronics warfare and nuclear engineering jobs. while I was in the service, I found out there's an ongoing non-consensual human experiment, and it's testing a human-machine interface weapon.
Now, did you stumble upon this? Were you privy to it?
Yeah, it was an issue where I think it was the next level up in the chain of command. You know, if there's 3 or 4 jobs you could take. There was a couple of them where you might be read into this program. And so we've got this issue here where we have a non-consensual experiment with a group of American citizens, and these some former military, but a lot of just unsuspecting citizens. You know, it's a group of people here in the United States. They're calling themselves targeted individuals, and it's people from all walks of life, and a lot of it's people who can't fight back. You know, it seems like predominantly the folks we talk to on the calls are it's about 70% women, single women who live alone, you know, that may not have a technical background that could even imagine something like this has happened in the past or could happen now.
Now I understand how you can do something non-consensually, because it's not like you're going to the VA to get a prostate exam and then suddenly you're like, wow, something's going on. They're just picking you out, using you don't know it.
Yep, completely wireless.
So you have to infiltrate them with something, though, right? Something has to touch their...
Not necessarily. A lot of people think that it can be done completely remote. Wow. But the only people that are going to know for sure are the ones that work with this technology. This is something where you're going to spend, for the scientist portion of it, you're going to spend about 6 years, developing your skills as a neuroscientist, and then as an operator that will work with a finished system, you're going to get at least 18 months to 2 years of
Which, like
training
most weapons, are great until they turn it against you. Natural question, how concerned are you going on the air and talking about this and walking across? Why don't you just disappear and chill a coffee?
No, I would just not. There's no way. These people are this is like a torture weapon. I couldn't live with myself knowing that, it's like not stepping in ahead of the Holocaust, or not stepping in.
And has this made it up to like Capitol Hill? Are there any senators who say...
This group has done public outreach for something like 30 years, and then a couple of people came out of the government. One of them came out of the CIA that worked with this equipment. He's got multiple degrees out of Harvard and Dartmouth. He's talked on the radio just for quite a long time, trying to let people know about this program. And it just doesn't go anywhere with the government. So it really needs to happen kind of
grassroots.
Grassroots, organically, that people need to know that this is happening.
But wouldn't there be people in the military or government angry about what you're doing, about spreading the word, not wanting people to know that this technology exists?
Yeah, you can't worry about that. You're talking about, they've tortured people to the point where they're going and shooting up, committing mass shootings. Those are not the people you need to worry about. That's not what the military is about. There's a strong ethical undercurrent there. If they're given an unlawful order, they know not to follow it. And this is clearly a case where this is a rogue program.
So we have this up on our blog.
On the Facebook page.
Where do people go, Dave, to find out if you've intrigued them? Where do they go to get all the information?
You can reach me at Facebook, David Voits, also TI in America Cross Country Walk on both GoFundMe and the Facebook page.
Are there citizens of this country that are being abused with this technology?
Worse than abuse, that's a light word. They are being tortured.
Now, the brain is an amazing organ. When it functions, there are millions and millions of neurons that become active. And what we've done at DARPA is develop the technology in order to sense these signals in real time, or even write signals into the brain. We can send those signals into a computer, and that computer can interpret what all of those signals actually mean when you're thinking about trying to do something. And we can place these sensors anywhere in your brain or even in your peripheral nervous system, right? These are the nerves that are outside of your brain, okay? So while you may have thought of neurotechnology, as I've just described to you, as being something way off in the future, it's actually a technology that exists today, and we're actually using it with humans. So we started in animal subjects. We said, okay, let's try these sensors out. Can we read out the signals in real time? And can we do something simple like control a robotic arm? And we showed that we could actually do that, just having the animal think about it. And once we proved out that technology, we said, okay, we're ready to go to humans. Can we place the same technology in the human brain and restore the ability to move and even sense after you've been injured? And I'm going to show you a couple examples of this. Yes, we could do that. And we said, okay, again, this is DARPA. We tried to push the limits of what's possible. We said, okay, if we can do that for movement and sensation, can we try to do something even more complex? So we went to memory in the human and said, okay, for humans, we could restore their ability to form and recall memories. Again, direct brain interface.
And the University of Oxford Functional Neurosurgery Group released a new report claiming that brain implants could be used to steal, spy on, alter, or control human memories.
A brain-to-machine interface is a system that allows a brain to directly communicate with a robot or computer. A necessary part of a brain-to-machine interface is an external EEG or, for a more advanced connection, a brain implant. The computer or robot controlled by a brain-to-machine interface can be very local, such as a computerized prosthetic arm, or extremely distant. Experiments to date have included paralyzed individuals controlling robot arms and typing on computer screens with their thoughts, and even featured rat neurons piloting flight simulators. Communication does not need to be only in the direction of brain to machine. Information sent from machine to brain has already been used to create sensations of touch. In theory, brain-to-machine interfaces open up the possibility of avatar technology, not simply controlling an external limb or a computer screen, but controlling an entire artificial you, allowing you to be effectively in two places at the same time. But for long-distance travel, be warned, it might be a bit disorienting as you experience an 8-minute delay between your thoughts on Earth and your avatar's movements on Mars. Would you want to explore Paris with a robotic avatar while your biological body lounged on the couch? Or take a nice hike while you mentally controlled your work computer? Watch where you're going. Even if you are in two places at once, your attention might not be.
This technology manipulates the electrical signals in the brain, thus controlling thoughts and feelings and emotions and sensations throughout the body. It works by rewiring the brain by creating new neural pathways and destroying existing neural pathways. Thus, this literally changes the way a person thinks and thus behaves. This technology can also be used to control the muscle movement of the target. It can take over one's hands or feet while driving and make you press on the accelerator or press on the brake or turn. This can be used to cause accidents. It can also be used to prevent accidents from happening. This technology can also tap into the optical nerve of the target and the auditory system of the target, so that those monitoring the target can see what the target is seeing and hear what the target is hearing. This information is then downloaded and stored on a computer in a highly secure, classified site on servers that are guarded by some of the tightest security in the world. This results in the individual's entire day, everything they see, everything they hear, everything they experience, and everything they feel being recorded till the end of time.
Chief Intelligence Correspondent Catherine Herridge continues her reporting on a place where all that data is heading.
Bluffdale, Utah, 25 miles south of Salt Lake City, the NSA is nearing completion on a gargantuan new project. It's named the Utah Data Center. The NSA will neither confirm nor deny the specifics, but some estimate the center will be capable of storing 5 zettabytes of data, or enough to store every email, cell phone call, Google search and surveillance camera video in America for a very long time. All the NSA would tell us is that the Utah Data Center is a facility for the intelligence community that will have a major focus on cybersecurity. We weren't given access last summer, but we could see it from the sky.
I want you to look real close because right now we're 500 feet over the Utah Data Center, and this is as close as you're going to get without a security clearance.
You can actually see the cranes right now after 12 o'clock.
Wow. From the sky, it's huge.
Yeah, it's gigantic.
It's really a turnkey situation where it can be turned quickly and become a totalitarian state pretty quickly. The capacity to do that is being set up.
That's a chilling assessment from Bill Binney, who worked at the NSA for nearly 4 decades, starting as a data analyst in the days before desktop computers. After 9/11, the NSA began a warrantless surveillance program approved by President Bush.
My estimate was that they were collecting on the order of $3 billion a day. That's just internal to this country.
In simple terms,
NSA was spying on Americans inside this country.
That's correct.
Technology can also tap into the optical nerve of the target and the auditory system of the target, so that those monitoring the target can see what the target is seeing and hear what the target is hearing. This information is then downloaded and stored on a computer in a highly secure, classified site.
Breaking news this evening is the identity of the man who sent the Obama administration into defend and explain mode this week. His name is Edward Snowden. He's an American former CIA employee and computer technician. Today he came out as the leaker of classified NSA documents that spell out a secret surveillance program. Snowden gave an on-camera interview to the Guardian newspaper, and we're playing it for you in its entirety. Here's some more of it. Listen.
When I think about an instance that really just struck me as, oh my God, we can do this. And that we can do it to anyone. And that we can do it to anyone was that people at NSA, analysts, can actually watch people's internet communications, watch them draft correspondence, and actually watch their thoughts form as they type. Watch their thoughts form as they type. As you write a message, you know, an analyst at the NSA or any other service out there that's using this kind of attack against people, any other service out there that's using this kind of attack against people can actually see you write sentences and then backspace over your mistakes and then change the words and then kind of pause and think about what you wanted to say, pause and think about what you wanted to say, and then change it, and then change it, change it. And it's this extraordinary intrusion, not just into your communications, your finished messages, but your actual drafting process, into the way you think, into the way you think, into the way you think.
One thing you have to understand is that within the security business, most of the people working there are ex-military and ex-intelligence operatives. And many of them, in fact, are still active intelligence operatives and have simply been reassigned to domestic duty to work with a private security company, specifically for the purposes of carrying out this highly illegal program that's being run against TIs all over America. So full-blown TIs, what I would call people that are getting the voice-to-skull, the frequency, and the organized stalking, I have heard is between 1 and 2 million, and that could be completely off. But one of the things I'm concerned about is the technology as it's being researched and developed in Seattle utilizes emotion manipulation and behavior manipulation without the game stalking and without the voice-to-skull aspects. And so this use of the technology can be done very covertly to the point where the person it's being used against will not know that this technology is being used against them. And that is one of my main concerns and one of the reasons why I want to bring more light to this technology and to this issue, because this technology could potentially be being used against tens to hundreds of millions of Americans every day. I've mentioned in some of my podcasts how there are field effects where they will not direct this technology at an individual, but create a general field of frequency in a geographical area so that everybody that within that geographical area is feeling the effects of the technology. It's more of a general application of the technology instead of an individual specific application of the technology. But when you consider that use of it and the fact that it is used for emotion and thought and behavior modification, then we could potentially be looking at many, many millions of people across the country that are under the influence of the technology today, right now.
Hundreds of people in the valley say they are hearing voices in their heads. And those voices are being transmitted by microwave or other methods.
Well, several viewers asked us to investigate what they call electronic harassment. KMIR6's Angela Monroe joins us now with what she's discovered. Angela.
Electronic harassment, synthetic telepathy, voice-to-skull technology. Chances are you haven't heard of these terms, but after searching the internet, I found dozens of websites dedicated to the phenomenon and several Valley residents who say they're victims.
How much more can you invade me than to go into my brain? It sounds like somebody else is reading the book, only it's thoughts.
We're not having a group hallucination.
this is actually something that's happening.
These men all live in the area, didn't know each other before the voices started, and say someone is playing mind games with them.
Mostly it's a lot of derogatory comments about whatever you're thinking about.
Kevin Bond says he used to have a normal life.
When I was living in the San Diego area, I was clerking for a federal judge, and I noticed that I was being followed by a whole bunch of people.
According to the websites, what Bond is describing is called gang stalking. He moved to Palm Springs to escape.
I started hearing, as you'll hear, hearing voices and what they'll call voice to skull or microwave hearing.
Bob Stansfield says his experience was similar and started a decade ago.
They were active in following me around here, and I started hearing the voices a little bit after the vehicular stalking.
Randall Ringer says the voices started when he was undergoing chemotherapy.
The first thing that was said was Randall Ringer. And I sat up straight and I went to into the bathroom, and I looked in the mirror. Looked myself in the eyes, and I said, did that really happen?
Bond says he's found more than 300 victims locally and is tracking others across the state through billboards. Bond says neurotransmitter chips that run off body electricity have been inserted into some people.
And they assign cell phone numbers to them. The cell phone numbers are then run through a computer, and a computer translates your thoughts. This crime has been available to the military for 60 years.
As many of the test subjects, so-called, the people are being experimented on, or as within the program as they're called, a target, as many of them have already learned, one of the key means of covering up this program is to use the psychological profession to do so. Those who speak out about this issue are funneled to psychiatrists for evaluation. The psychiatrists are working with those who are running this program. In many cases, they are directly paid by them to render a diagnosis of schizophrenic, multiple personality disorder, delusional, paranoid, depressed, upon the test subjects, the targets, so that they will be discredited, so that if they talk out any further or they ever start making any progress against this program, they are inherently discredited, because those who run this program will simply release the psychological files and claim that the person is mentally ill. This is a perfect way to cover up such a technology whose main feature and most popular feature, most well-known feature, is voice to skull, which induces sound within the cranial cavity of the test subject, of the target themselves, so that when that person goes to speak out about it, when they go to seek help from their fellow human beings, and their fellow human beings say, what is it that's happening to you? The target will then say, I'm hearing voices inside my head. It's the result of voice to skull technology. It's a sophisticated microwave auditory effect. It's radio frequency signals that are being beamed at my fucking head that are causing me to hear sounds and voices inside my head. Obviously, if members of the general public are not aware of the existence of this technology, which many of them are not, most of them are not, then they will interpret that as concerning. They will feel concern for the target. And they will conclude that this person must be crazy. And as a result, they will recommend psychological evaluation for that person. You can see the way this is going to go, and the way it is going right now. As good people, helpless people that are being abused and tortured and enslaved and experimented upon in America today, American citizens cry out for help from their fellow Americans. And their fellow Americans say, why don't you take some Prozac? Because we think you're schizophrenic. When this is a highly technical program, all of the symptoms are induced by a technology that is so fucking sophisticated, it is horrifying beyond description.
We also see the use of biodata as a viable weapon. Manipulating biodata so that I can then put into your particular medical records subtle information that may change the disposition of whether you're sick or not, change how you're treated, influence the postures that go to you in terms of insurance, care, viability for military service. By altering that information, by changing those data, by purloining those data, I essentially changed the you of you. And I can do that in very subtle and insidious ways. Furthermore, I can do that on a variety of different levels that can affect key individuals so that in fact your medical record changes to thereby render you incapable or at least invalid to be able to serve in a way you're serving. Or I can do that on a much larger scale, groups, populations. And if I change those data, I change the way you're being regarded and treated. And I can do that in one of two ways. I can do it in such a way that you're going to be regarded in a negative sense, or I can do that in such a way that I'm going to treat you incorrectly. If I say, for example, you have a particular allergy or you have a particular disorder, you will be treated for that, and that could then harm your health and your stability in both a short wars approach as well as a long wars approach. The brain is the current and future battle space.
And you mentioned that you are convinced that this could still be going on today. What other kind of experiments do you think the CIA could be doing today?
Well, I would say intelligence agencies around the world probably have Manchurian candidate sleepers operative today, and they're using a whole range of techniques to control and create them, which is in terrorist organizations there's going to be the religious doctrine part of it, but it's the basic mind control programming technology that we've known about for decades. You control a person's life space, control the information flow, talk to them, convince them, frighten them, terrorize them, soften them up with hypnosis, drugs, which can be IV drugs or drugs by mouth. It's a whole range of different techniques. It's not just one thing.
Was here not so long ago on a tragic night that has many wondering what could make a man snap and lose control.
Kind of my last words. It's really unfortunate that I have to make this video. See, I am a victim of covert harassment and electronic harassment and gang stalking. I'm what's called a targeted individual.
On November 20th, 2014, 31-year-old Myron May walks into Strozier Library on the campus of Florida State University and opens fire. 3 people are injured. May tries to leave campus, and a shootout with police in front of the library ends violently. The medical examiner confirming May was shot 24 times by police.
6:03, and we continue with a deadly school shooting, and we're learning more about what confessed gunman Nicholas Cruz told investigators during an 11-hour interrogation. The transcript is more than 200 pages long.
And while it was heavily redacted, we've learned that Cruz told the BSO detective that he heard a demon in his head.
That police shooting down in Baton Rouge, Louisiana. As we said, 3 police officers were killed, 3 others were wounded when they were ambushed by a gunman who was dressed in all black.
That suspect, who was killed by other officers at the scene, has now been identified as Gavin Long. He's a former Marine whose 29th birthday was Sunday, the day of this attack.
And a lot of TIs, they don't even know that harassment is a felony. Stalking with harassment is a damn felony. That's a felony charge. You definitely have the right to defend yourself. And if someone is, and you know, gang stalking is, they're trying to attempt you, they're trying to make you attempt suicide. That's attempted murder. If someone is trying to attempt you to force you into suicide, isn't that attempted murder? Come on now. Let's open our eyes, get it together. Hey, defend yourself at all costs, stand in your righteousness, die in your righteousness, period.
A shooting at the oldest Navy facility in the country, home to 15,000, including the Navy's top officer, and only a few miles from the White House and Capitol building. Panic ensued in Washington, D.C. today as the death toll mounted.
We got a report on the 4th floor, a male with a shotgun, multiple shots fired, multiple people down. We're still waiting for the okay that the scene has been secured.
The FBI released images of the weapon, a Remington 870 shotgun, which had messages etched on the side. Better off this way. And my ELF weapon. An apparent reference to extremely low frequency waves. Officials reckon he believed he was being controlled by them in the months before he killed 12 people.
At this point, I can confirm that there are multiple indicators that Alexis held a delusional belief that he was being controlled or influenced by extremely low frequency, or ELF, electromagnetic waves.
U.S. and Cuban officials say they're investigating allegations of a possible acoustic attack on U.S. embassy staff in Havana last year.
Just to add to the confusion, there is speculation coming out of Washington that it may actually have been a third country that was involved in this.
Now Russia is the leading suspect, NBC News has learned, according to 3 U.S. officials and 2 others briefed on the investigation. Evidence, they say, backed up by highly secret communications intercepts collected during a lengthy and ongoing investigation involving the FBI, CIA, and other agencies. U.S. officials also tell NBC News investigators now believe the Americans were deliberately targeted.
Secretary, can I ask you a question about some of the technology that you're developing to fight the war on terror, specifically directed energy and high-powered microwave technology? When do you envision that you can weaponize that type of technology?
Goodness. It is in, for the most part, the kinds of things you're talking about are in varying early stages. Do you want to give anything you'd add?
I don't think I would add much. I think they are in early stages and probably not ready for employment at this point.
In the normal order of things, when you invest in research and development and begin a developmental project, you don't have any intention or expectations that one would use it. On the other hand, the real world intervenes from time to time, and you reach in there and take something out that is still in a developmental stage, and you might use it. So your question is not answerable. It depends on what happens in the future and how well things move along the track, and whether or not someone feels it's appropriate to reach into a development stage and see if something might be useful, as was the case with the unmanned aerial vehicles.
But you sound like you're willing to experiment with it.
I think that's the point, and I think, we have, I think, from the beginning of this conflict, I think General Franks has been very open to looking at new things if there are new things available, and has been willing to put them into the fight even before they've been fully wrung out. And I think that's not referring to these 2 particular cases of directed energy or high-powered microwave.
With your background and what you know, can you give us a hint on what we ought to do?
No.
No. Is it too late?
I actually believe it's too late.
So what you're telling me, every one of us should be in fear of this because every one of us at some point will be targeted?
The technology's advanced that far.
Every single man, woman, and child in the United States of America will be under the influence of this technology. And as you can see, going forward, what's going to happen is a dividing line is going to be drawn in America. And it's not going to be Democrat or Republican or black and white, rich, poor, Jew, Gentile, religious differences, whatever it is. It's going to be based on who is on the right and the wrong side of this technology, who is on the right and the wrong side of this program. And so if you are not a part of this program, then there is a very real risk that you are going to become a full-blown, 24/7 targeted individual. And this technology at that point, when it is nationwide, will be used by automated supercomputer software programming that will manipulate the emotions and the behavior and the thoughts of everybody in the United States of America. And it can all be done remotely. It's very much like the microchip kind of tracking the New World Order, this entire, control grid that's supposed to be rolled out against the American people someday. And I'm here to tell you that it's already here. There isn't going to come a day where there's troops in the streets and tanks rolling down your neighborhood and riot gear and all this stuff. We might have isolated incidents like that. It might get like that every once in a while, but the true control grid is this technology, voice-to-skull, hive mind, behavior manipulation technology. And it can all be done remotely. It can be done simply by targeting you with the frequency, locking into the resonant frequency of your DNA and your mind, and in that manner completely track and trace and control you 24 hours a day. And
the Internet of Things and the 5G grid is the end game of the New World Order, and it is the New World Order itself. The New World Order being the new world where everything is orderly. Everything is tracked, everything is accounted for, every move, every action, every conversation, every thought, everything people do is tracked. When you're looking at the Internet of Things and this 5G surveillance grid and what is really coming online, this technocracy that is coming online, everything else kind of pales into insignificance, because in this AI grid that is coming online to control us, and it will be an AI grid, it will be controlled by AI, this is in their own plans. Now, in this grid, there is no one you can really point the finger at, there's no government you can bring down, there's no one you can really say is the controlling hand at that point. All control leaves the hands of the people, and control gets handed over to the internet itself. And that's what they're working towards, and it's in all their own documents.
We're now at a stage where we're putting in what's called 5G, which is a special type of broadcast for high-density information transfers. And it turns out that this is the same frequency bands that are used in crowd dispersal weaponry.
5G, first and foremost, is densification. So it's significantly more transmitters at close proximity to a human, and it is also a sophisticated, illegal, unlawful transmitter. What I mean by that is it is a high gain dielectric lens antenna, and what that allows 5G transmitters to do is to 3D map its environment in your home. The 868 megahertz frequency is specific for battlefield interrogation systems, so sub-gigahertz. It allows the signal to travel through concrete brickwork with ease, and it can actually data gather. It is a target acquiring system.
The frequency that's being emitted by the device will have an effect on a geographical location, let's say downtown Seattle. And so what they can do is, within this general field, they can broadcast a frequency that affects human beings within that frequency field, and can induce a general mood of, let's say, happiness or sadness, anger, agitation, peacefulness. And in this way, they can have an overall effect in the city. And I have seen this done, and it is remarkable how effective it is, because you will walk down the street of Seattle and literally see people all in a bad mood, all at the same time, and they do not know each other. And then you go over a block or two to a different office building, and you walk in, and the exact same thing's going on there. It's very, very concerning. So within that, then, that overall bubble or area of frequency where everybody, let's say, is in a bad mood, they can still inject what would be a individual specific frequency to the targeted individual themselves, let's say the homeless person in Seattle that's being experimented on 24 hours a day. So they will be under the influence of the general agitated mood or bad mood that everybody else is in, and then they can more further be manipulated by the frequency that's being directed solely at them.
Phased array is basically radar off the battlefield. It is extremely good at identifying targets and being able to lock onto targets. And not only that, it can specifically target you as an individual. So any judge sitting on an interesting case, let's say, any lawyer, any barrister, anybody doing any work that is potentially controversial, your life could be at threat. So the antenna design that you currently have on top of these LED streetlights, masquerading as a control management system, it basically battlefield interrogation equipment. The first phased array unit was actually called Mammoth, used by the Germans during the Second World War to identify Allied aircraft. Obviously things have moved on significantly since then.
The radio frequencies, microwave signals, the entire spectrum of radio frequencies can be used within a certain range to produce all sorts of different effects. So the way it works is a device broadcasts a radio frequency, let's say at an individual, and that radio frequency will hook up with the resonant frequency of the individual's mind or body, or in this case, DNA. And what happens is once the resonant frequency is found in the targeted individual and the broadcast frequency matches up with that resonant frequency, those two frequencies interlock and they can be thought of as one frequency or one energy. And what happens is between the broadcast frequency and the individual that's receiving the broadcast frequency, once it's resonating, once they are resonating together, a super highway of frequency along which information can be sent is created. And so you can think of it just like fiber optic cables that you use to send signals over the internet that connect people to the internet. It's the exact same thing, only a wireless application of that.
Rosaday was working with the CIA and exchanging technology and study data with the Russians back in the 60s and 70s and even further back, and he figured out scientifically, demonstratively, how non-ionizing radiation at various specific frequencies from microwaves or from other signals, how they could alter human and animal behavior. For instance, a simple 10 hertz wave could put someone into a stupor within a couple of minutes. Using neuroelectric devices that they developed by the 70s, they could put individuals or entire towns to sleep on command. They can aggravate people, they can alter their sexual preferences, they could delete their memories, they could turn on desire, they could turn on repulsion, and they could otherwise hijack someone's spontaneous and natural behavior. They could literally hijack your nervous system and your brain. And that was 30 or 40 years ago. Now things are very advanced, they're very precise, and they're very far along. There's discussions now at the Davos World Economic Forum that have broached the topic of mind reading and literal mind control. And these devices, the capability to do it is built into everything, every handheld unit, every laptop, mobile device that everyone's carrying around. And once things are fast enough with 5G, all bets are off. The constant ubiquitous connection with these next generation 5G towers, I mean, what else can you say? I don't want to add paranoia, I don't want to make people fearful, but basically, where can you run from this? Once this system is fully launched and up, it's going to be just like the Terminator Genesis system. It's going to be the rise of AI, and it's going to be like there's no looking back.
We must reject the notion that the 5G future will be the sole providence of urban areas. The 5G revolution will touch all corners of our country. We are the pioneers of a new spectrum frontier.
No one gave permission for this because most people don't fully understand what's happening or why it matters. They're going to click on little agreements on their cell phone for the different sites they visit, and they're going to have no idea how much is going to be taken from that. But it's clear that this is not a good bargain, and people need to be warned. They should try to oppose this in their local cities and where they can, and try to challenge these companies, because they don't want to face resistance, and they don't want a population that knows about the dangers and the risks of this technology.
In 1953, the Russians began to bombard the U.S. Embassy in Moscow with electromagnetic radiation in the microwave spectrum, but the fact was kept secret from the embassy employees. Dr. Henry Kissinger sent a secret memo giving hazard pay to embassy personnel in the 1970s. Before the attacks, the USSR had met with the U.S. to try to head off an arms race in electromagnetic weapons, but were refused. In retaliation, they began microwaving the U.S. Embassy. It is possible that the U.S. government took advantage of the situation and used the embassy staff as microwave guinea pigs. The Department of Defense's Advanced Research Projects Agency, ARPA, set up a lab at Walter Reed Army Institute of Research and participated in Project Pandora. Scientists began zapping monkeys to study the biological effects of highly concentrated microwave frequencies. Similar studies were conducted at the VA hospital in Kansas City, University of Rochester, Brooks Air Force Base, Johns Hopkins, MIT, the MITRE Corporation, University of Pennsylvania, and other domestic and foreign labs.
Something else the 5G grid can do is it can see through walls, it can see through houses, it can see what you're carrying along the street, it can see if you're carrying money, it may be able to tell if you're carrying a weapon. And if you are carrying a weapon, it can disable you with a millimeter wave, or it can even perhaps send a signal to a drone and have you targeted from the air. All of this is capable through the 5G system. It's also possible to take control of vehicles with computers in them. It's an all-encompassing system. And this is not just being used for communication. This is being used for surveillance and control.
This is not just an incremental change. This is a big step up.
It's a sea change. An onslaught's not an improper word. It's a bombardment. So instead of a cell tower 1 mile or 2 miles from you and you still have cell phone service, we're going to have antennas every block, and some poor soul is going to have one mounted to a utility pole maybe less than 20 meters from their home. So this kind of invasive bombardment with this many antennas, I mean, just in 1 square mile, if you do the math, 1 per block and 16 blocks per mile, that's about 250 antennas per square mile. The millimeter wave is untested. Former FCC Chairman Tom Wheeler openly said that they don't plan to test it.
We won't wait for the standards.
And then our appeal also addresses the fact that there's a plan to roll out 5G through satellites in low Earth orbit. So 20,000 satellites, which will cover every square foot of the planet with a 5G signal.
So this amazing set of missions aim to create a super low latency telecommunications network. And how are they going to do this? Not by launching just these 60 satellites, which, let's face it, is a damn amazing mission by itself, but by launching around 12,000 satellites in 3 sophisticated orbital shells around the world. No big deal, right? The better question might be, why is SpaceX attempting to create this network?
What this whole system is leading towards, folks, is complete digital control of everybody and a merging of human beings with AI. And when you look at Elon Musk and some of the stuff he's been putting out, he's saying that it is necessary for us to merge with AI. It's going to be the only way to save us against AI completely taking over. And he's saying this needs to be done through a neural net. And listen to this.
If you assume any rate of advancement in AI, we will be left behind by a lot.
That is Elon Musk, the inventor and entrepreneur behind such futuristic endeavors as Tesla, SpaceX, and Hyperloop. And as you heard, Elon Musk has AI, artificial intelligence, on his mind these days. He says AI machines could soon outsmart us all. And his philosophy is if we can't beat them, we should join them by implanting AI computers directly into our brains.
So, from a long-term existential standpoint, that's like the purpose of Neuralink, is to create a high bandwidth interface to the brain such that we can be symbiotic with AI. Because we have a bandwidth problem. You just can't communicate through your fingers, it's too slow. So I think if we can effectively merge with AI by improving that the neural link between your cortex and your digital extension of yourself, which already, like I said, already exists, just has a bandwidth issue.
Pay close attention to what he said there. What he said was that this interface already exists. It's just that they have to improve the bandwidth. They have bandwidth problems. So how might these bandwidth problems be improved?
Not just that 5G is faster than 4G and that's it. It has other features such as much lower latency. It also has higher capacity for bandwidth and higher capacity for number of devices.
SpaceX took the first step towards its orbiting internet system late Thursday. A Falcon 9 rocket launched from Florida's Cape Canaveral with a payload of 60 small satellites. Eventually, CEO Elon Musk wants to put 12,000 up there.
As these smart technologies begin to invade our homes, we are becoming mere nodes in a giant network that we yet but dimly comprehend. Called the Internet of Things, the plan is to create a network that will eventually include every single object on the planet. And as the public is finally becoming aware, such networks provide golden opportunities for corporations and governments alike to collect data and spy on the population. This is not mere conjecture. Before becoming enmeshed in an affair that ultimately derailed his career, former CIA Director David Petraeus bragged openly about how these smart technologies would allow intelligence agencies to spy on everyone in their own homes using their own appliances. Speaking at a summit for In-Q-Tel, the CIA's venture capital firm, Petraeus noted, "Items of interest will be located, identified, monitored, and remotely controlled through technologies such as radio frequency identification, sensor networks, tiny embedded servers, and energy harvesters." In practice, these technologies could lead to rapid integration of data from closed societies and provide near-continuous, persistent monitoring of virtually anywhere we choose. Whether Petraeus' own downfall as a result of FBI eavesdropping on private emails is part of a plan to warn future would-be whistleblowers, poetic justice, or mere irony, it is nonetheless instructive. When everything that anyone does is tracked, traced, and databased at all times, from our dishwasher usage to our television viewing to our toilet flushes, no one will be able to avoid the gaze of the state, regardless of whether or not they have something to hide. As IT World's Kevin Fogarty observed, if J. Edgar Hoover were alive, he would die of jealousy at the technologies available to the would-be big brothers of today. For the unimaginative out there, Hollywood yarns like Enemy of the State have provided fictional examples of what can go wrong if someone, somewhere, abuses the power of information and surveillance to target an innocent person in the wrong place at the wrong time. To be sure, the power that these technologies give for agencies or corrupt groups within those agencies to destroy the lives of targeted individuals is itself a fitting answer to the question of why government surveillance should be troubling to us. But beyond what can happen to specific targeted individuals in such a scenario is a much larger question. What if this data were being fed into a database so gargantuan it contains a digital version of every single person on the planet? And what if that database were being used by the Department of Defense to wargame various scenarios, from public reactions to natural disasters to the likelihood of civil unrest in the wake of a declaration of martial law? Remarkably, this is precisely what is happening. It is called the Sentient World Simulation. The program's aim, according to its creator, is to be a continuously running, continually updated mirror model of the real world that can be used to predict and evaluate future events and courses of action. In practical terms, that equates to a computer simulation of the entire planet, complete with billions of nodes representing every person on the Earth. At the time of initial reports on the program 5 years ago, there were only 62 country-level simulations being run by the US Department of Defense. These simulations grouped humans into composites, with 100 individuals acting as a single node. But already at that time, the US Army had used the systems to create a one-to-one level simulation of potential Army recruits. The ultimate aim would be to archive enough data on each individual to be able to make a computer model of everyone on the planet, one that could be used to predict the behaviors and reactions of every single person in the event of various scenarios.
Now, creating a world simulation is not a new concept. Even a sentient one has been attempted over and over. For the public, these often came in the form of video games. The problem with these models is that they have to be constantly changed and upgraded. Every time there is a major event, new trend, or change in the real world. The Sentient World Simulation does this automatically. So what this is a synthetic mirror of the world we live in. Not a piece of it, but the entire world. And this program constantly recalibrates the simulation based on real-time world events, trends, theories, economics, industry, almost everything you can think of that would contribute to an accurate model. Not to mention the individual pieces of data on every single person represented in the simulation. So to put this in perspective, what this is a digital clone of our world and everyone in it.
Jade came from a 3-part software program, and that program was called Jade. And essentially there's a data dump, there's an analyzing program, and then there's a war chest style program. that takes all the data that funnels into it at all times and analyzes it and breaks it down to exactly the meaningful info that is then deployed to people in the field. One thing about Jade 2.0, which is what we're at right now, is Jade 2.0 isn't using traditional computers. It's using very small, complex, little, tiny machines. It is a quantum-style computer. And that's something that hasn't been done on a war front that I know of. And a lot of times, when you're talking quantum computers, you're talking thousands of processors onto a space that you can't even see. It's so small. The military has finally come up with an answer of how do you listen to the world's data and analyze it and have the computing power to do it all in real time. With quantum computers, you can do that. That in itself is a lot that's coming at us. But without the quantum computers in the mix, they would never ever have the processing power to be able to pull off a war based upon real-time information delivered directly to the soldiers' hands in the field instantaneously. Essentially, what we're up against is we're up against a software program that's going to know us far better than we ever know ourselves. To the point, they even have modules that predetermine what somebody is about to do based upon past logging of all the historical data they've already collected. All of our patterns are easily seen. So the first phase of Jade Helm, on top of getting all their equipment deployed across the United States in very strategic locations, is literally finding where are the enemies. What are we doing? And the reason they're keeping everything so secretive is so that we are exposing ourselves by every time that we send a text and talk about Jade Helm, every time that we talk about resistance, every time that we talk about this isn't the right thing to do. Almost instantaneously, the artificial intelligence software, Jade 2.0, filed on you and me and whoever it is they are after. So Jade 2.0 is essentially the full command and conquer style military program. It eliminates all the middlemen. It goes directly from the elite or whoever's top of the chain, and it goes directly to the soldiers. There is no middleman anymore. There's no more wait. There's no more having to wait for instructions, because Jade 2.0 can give you everything you need to know instantaneously by just giving it the right data. If you give it the right data, it's going to take the algorithm and it's going to show you what's up and where to go and where you need to put your firepower on. Over the last couple of years, they fired 200 of the top, the best, the top shelf generals. They've gotten rid of them. And they were the guys who would literally not pull the trigger on civilians. They want people who are willing to do whatever it takes. Some of the scary things that Jade can do and why it's so scary is the fact that this information is assimilated and it's run through war game software. And the war game software is able to tell them, the commanders in the field, real time, what to do, who the resistance is, and where the resistance is at. It's almost like a battle that you don't need real generals and colonels for. It's a battle that deploys and plays out by itself. What I personally find most heartbreaking is that essentially the technology that we've come to love and to use and to build and to change society for the better, we hoped, has now been used and is being used to hunt us and kill us, and is essentially our greatest enemy that we've known to date. If they were being forthcoming and were telling us what really Jade Helm was all about, we would be out scrambling and trying to find as much data as we can on this. This is why it's pretty clear to see that Jade Helm began the second they announced it, and the second people began reporting all the military action. And that's what Jade Helm is all about. It's about mastering the human domain. What will we do? What will we be doing next? How are we going to do it? Who are our friends? What do our friends think? Are there political people among us? Are there fighters among us? What are we going to do? Master the human domain. Every time you go to Facebook and look for Jade Helm stuff, when you go to YouTube, every single bit of this is fed back into Jade 2.0. Now, since they've gotten rid of the top commanders, it appears that now our military is essentially being run by a computer system.
A former NSA official claims that the United States is now a hair's breadth from becoming a turnkey totalitarian state.
Intelligence communities or agencies of the world are gaining too much influence over government, how governments operate. And this is moving really to a Stasi state, basically. And it's not just the United States, it's countries all around the world. You have to be aware that these agencies are threatening what is fundamental to human rights everywhere. And you've got to ensure that you have some way of verifying and keeping these agencies in line.
Though the official mandate of the NSA is to eavesdrop on foreign communications, we now know that it has long been pointing its instruments inward. In the Philippines, circa 1950, CIA Psywar operative Ed Lansdale employed a technique known as the Eye of God. At night, operatives would paint an eye on the wall of a house facing a suspected communist or communist sympathizer. The message, "We are watching you." In some respects, the NSA's well-publicized spying on American citizens has the same effect. The very fact that they have claimed the right to spy on American citizens is a gross violation of their mandate. Similarly, the CIA, which is prohibited from conducting internal security functions within the United States, has repeatedly broken its own rules. Under Operation Chaos, the agency spied on leftists during the Civil Rights era. Under MKUltra, they used thousands of American citizens as human guinea pigs. During Operation Mockingbird, they illegally propagandized the American public.
According to CIA documents, for 25 years, more than 400 American journalists secretly carried out assignments for the Central Intelligence Agency. Some people did this in exchange for money, while others did this voluntarily. Among the participants were Pulitzer Prize-winning journalists and even famous correspondents. Assignments included intelligence gathering, publishing agency press releases as stories, shaping other stories, and even planting false information.
Do you have any people being paid by the CIA who are contributing to a major circulation American journal?
We do have people who submit pieces to American journals.
Do you have any people paid by the CIA who are working for television networks?
This, I think, gets into the kind of getting into the details, Mr. Chairman, that I'd like to get into in executive session.
Just as Eisenhower would later warn of a military-industrial complex that he himself had helped to create, Truman would voice alarm over the evolution of the Central Intelligence Agency.
He came to not only regret it, but to speak out about it. In 1963, 30 days to the day after the assassination of John F. Kennedy, Truman actually wrote an op-ed that was published in the Washington Post in which he revealed this, and he said, "I never intended for it to become what it has become." And this is very interesting because that op-ed appeared in the early edition of the Washington Post, and then it was excised from all the later editions that day. Allen Dulles, perhaps the most important of the CIA directors, flew out to Independence, Missouri to try to get Truman to retract what he had written, and he refused.
November 22nd, 1963, not only did John Kennedy die, it's also the day America's free press died. They became proven aiders, abettors, and protectors of the known murderers of President John F. Kennedy.
At the same time the OPC became operational, the National Security Council approved a radical new policy. It secretly authorized the CIA to conduct programs which were officially non-existent, thereby bypassing the US Congress. The NSC ordered that the new operations be deniable, meaning planned and executed, so that any US government responsibility for them is not evident to unauthorized persons, and that for those uncovered, the US government can plausibly disclaim any responsibility.
And that is really the genesis of unacknowledged special access projects. Now, a special access project just means you have to have the clearance to get to it and be read into it, as they say in military speak. But an unacknowledged project, I just want to go through a minute how that works. Let's say that this gentleman is a 4-star general, and I'm a colonel. I'm Major Joe 4-star general. But I'm in an unacknowledged special access project dealing with this or some other subject. It can be other things as well. If I am in an unacknowledged project, I am told, and I have one of my most senior military advisors has been in multiple of these. He was in one project that was $2 to $3 billion. He knew it was more than 2 and almost 3 billion in a project that was off the books, no accounting, president didn't know, Congress didn't know, tightly held. A military guy working with some corporate folks. And he told me, he says, here's how it works. He says, they take you to a SCIF, a Secure Communication Intelligence Facility, SCIF, take all the equipment off of you, any guns off, cell phones, watches, nothing. Anything metallic. You go into this underground facility and there's a meeting. And he says, hey, you have a come into Jesus talk. And what happens is that you are told that only the people in that room are read into and cleared to this unacknowledged special access project. And if you speak of it outside of that circle of people, there's one person there with a gun and a bullet. And he takes the bullet out and he says, it has your name on it if you speak to anyone, and I mean anyone, your wife, the president, your commander, about what we're doing. And that is how it works. This is not a conspiracy theory. I've been in these SCIFs. I've been in a couple places, and I can tell you that is exactly how it operates. The real tragedy of it, though, is that if you have a breakdown in government this severe, those of you who are students of governance, where you can have a CIA director or senior members of the military who are being left out of something very important and which hundreds of billions of dollars per year are going into, then you have no government. So the deep national security state from 1950s until today has devolved into this sub rosa, unacknowledged, not international, transnational entity with representation in the UK, Canada, Australia, Brazil, China, Russia, former Soviet Union, which on this issue work together like this. It is not responsive to the body politic. It is not responsive to the heads of government or even the heads of committees and cabinet level people. There are some cabinet level people, however, who have known. I mentioned a few. There was a CIA director known as George H.W. Bush, and the CIA headquarters is now named after him. He was a member and is a member of MAGIC. But then there are others like Woolsey who wouldn't be told anything. Some presidents have been given a little information, and some have been told nothing.
What you know as stellar wind has grown. SSO, the expanded special source operations that took over Stellar Wind's share of the pie, has spread all over the world to practically include comprehensive coverage of the United States. Disturbingly, the amount of U.S. communication ingested by NSA is still increasing. Publicly, we complain that things are going dark, but in fact, our accesses are improving. The truth is that the NSA has never in its history collected more than it does now. I know the location of most domestic interception points, and that the largest telecommunication companies in the U.S. are betraying the trust of their customers, which I can prove. We are building the greatest weapon for oppression in the history of man.
The very word secrecy is repugnant in a free and open society, and we are, as a people, inherently and historically opposed to secret societies, to secret oaths, and to secret